Hey you, yeah you who clicked on this video. Thanks for giving our channel a shot. And if you will, please do us the honor of watching the video all the way through. Appreciate it. Now onto the video. So from episode 8, Broken Windows, Open Door. So I mean, we are reeling after the monstrous invasion of Colony House. And in the midst of all this turmoil, Boyd is getting ready for his journey when Kenny walks in and tells him that the Colony House residents will be staying in the townspeople's basement and that he should get everyone together. And Boyd reveals that Khatri saved his life when he first got to town and tells Kenny that it's really his responsibility now if he really feels like he can succeed Boyd as the sheriff of the town. And so he needs to get everybody together because Boyd is obviously trying to, gear himself up for his journey to possibly save the town. So then we see Boyd coming to fetch, and it's an interesting scene because it's very quick. It happens right before the credits, but Boyd means business. So we are treated to a flashback of Boyd, his wife, and Ellis. So Boyd, Abby, and Ellis are listening to, I think, a Lyle Lovett song while coming to town, and they're really just it's just interesting because you can see that they were a happy family. But we learn a lot in this scene. So number one, we learn that both Boyd and his wife are career military, where Boyd, I do believe, was Army, his wife Abby was a Marine, and we know that Boyd is basically retiring from the military. And one thing that, not even a regret, but kind of a wish that he had is that he really wanted a boat. And so just watching Ellis and Abby just mess with him about this boat before revealing that the retirement gift that they got him was actually a boat is just really charming. And it just shows that, people aren't always these broken shells of, that you see today. At some point, certain people were in fact happy. And that's what you really see in this scene. So we get back to the present, and Sarah and Boyd walk into the woods, and he lets her know that, that the monsters used to shriek prior to finding the talismans, which is an interesting idea. And I wonder why that is, why they felt the need to talk. And my assumption and my theory on this is that with the talismans, they weren't just easy prey anymore. So the monsters had to take a different form and a different approach. And that approach is to really talk to and lure out the townspeople so that they can get their daily meal, as opposed to before they could just run up on them and eat them indiscriminately. It was basically, it has now become a little pig, let me in situation, as opposed to playing hide and seek like they were playing prior to the talisman. So, then we get to see that Sarah is still acting a fool. I don't really have an opinion on her, but she just is always acting like she hasn't done anything, and it's very irritating. So she's demanding to know where they're going, and just it's like, you have no rights. By all accounts, your ass should have been in the box, but whatever, right? So she then asks about Ellis and he informs her that that it's all good and that Ellis is still alive. So then, of course, she's asking about Father Khatri, and, where's Father Khatri? Because, she's really trying to act like she cares about Father Khatri, but realistically, she knows that the only person that was, falling for her cock and bull about the voices, which I do believe the voices are real, but I don't necessarily think that they're benevolent in any real way. So he's falling, she wants somebody that's a sympathetic ear to her cock and bull story, which she believed that Father Khatri was, where obviously Boyd ain't having it. So then we get to Kenny, and he's bringing the people from Colony House into him and his mother's home with Jade, despite Jade's protests, because, I guess Jade feels like there's too many people in a house that don't belong to him, but, why would he stop being an entitled SOB now? He's been that since the show first started, so, he's keeping that same energy. All right. So, we go from that to Julie basically explaining to Jim and Tabitha how she escaped from Colony House and that Victor, in fact, saved her. And then, Ethan, of course, because, he a little boy, he pipes up about the faraway trees and basically explains how Julie was able to get from Colony House to the cellar, to the root cellar. Julie, obviously, because she's been through a very traumatic experience, especially for somebody her age, she has a breakdown, and that's to be expected. I'm really glad that they're able to address the emotional issues, especially of the children and the younger cast members, or the younger characters that they're playing. Instead of just glossing over, the fact that Julie was witness to countless people being murdered all around her. Well, actually, it's not countless. They were 14. I need to stop being dramatic. Anyway, so, we get through that, and they talk about the static on the radio, and Jim informs Jade, of course, about the static as he's, basically doing the Jim thing, which is being like super overprotective dad, about to just whoop everybody's ass for looking at his kids, which I understand. I'm a dad, so I get it. And, they're in a really weird spot, but like, you don't need to whoop everybody's ass. You could leave some ass unwhooped, So, and then they bring up the fact that Jade ran off when they were experimenting with the radio signal because of the vision that he had. So that was pretty cool. And we go into another flashback of Boyd and his family when they are first arriving into town, and Father Khatri is basically trying to like ease them into the situation because it's literally getting dark. There are no talismans at this point, and the basic strategy is to, according to Boyd, hide and pray. So, he's trying to convince them to come with him, and Abby is having none of it. Like, she pulls the tool out of nowhere. Really is about to bust heat on a obvious priest. Like, he has the collar on and everything, and Abby gives 0 F's about whether or not she is going to blast this priest for like jumping in front of their vehicle. Like, it's crazy. So, then they decide to listen because they start hearing the shrieking. And if you've heard the shrieking of these monsters, they don't sound like anything that you experience in nature. Like, nothing. Like, I would have followed them too. I would have followed a drunk hobo, if I heard them shrieks out of nowhere. Like, it's got to happen right there today. So then we see that they're all hiding, and we see a earlier version of Donna and some others, and you can hear as they're with each other, and Khatri's telling Boyd and his family that he's going to obviously explain everything in the morning, but you could just hear the people who were unfortunate enough to get caught by the monsters, them just getting devoured, and it's very unsettling. So then we get back to the present, and Ellis is getting his shoulder reset by Christy, and Christy's basically trying to give first aid and and just medical care to the many injured members of Colony House after they've got that crushing defeat from those monsters. And what's interesting to me about what happened at Colony House, I hate to digress, but I'm gonna do it anyway because this is my show. But what interests me about that is, I wonder if anybody realizes that Porn Stash, because I can't remember his name from last episode, nor does it matter because he's dead, but Porn Stash let them in. Like, I wonder, because they seem like in this episode, they question the efficacy of the talismans a bunch of times in this episode, and I'm coming to the realization that nobody actually knows where the screw up happened, but rather that something that they were already doing failed. And they don't really realize that somebody let these monsters in. And that is so interesting to me. I wonder if they're going to cover that next episode. I really do, because that is fascinating to me, that everybody is now, because they lost so many people in such a gruesome fashion, that they're now questioning the things that have been working for such a long time. The real failure of Colony House is that, number one, there was a bunch of alcohol with a bunch of people, in a confined space. But number two, that there's no real accountability. It's kind of like this free form, everybody watch each other, and we're going to just do our thing, man. No, it wasn't all good. And the idea of Colony House probably should have failed a long time ago. But, all right. So then, we get the information. Oh, actually, hold on. I'm missing a big part. So my man Kenny got a kiss. He got a peck. Yes. Christy's coming around. Kenny's feeling himself. He got some pep in his step, boy. She put a battery in that man's back with that little kiss, boy. Go ahead, Kenny. So anyway, then, we go to Jade and Jim heading to Colony House and basically trying to convince Donna to let them use Colony House as a high point for the antenna. And, she's burying the remains of the 14 that passed at Colony House, because it's not like those graves weren't pre-dug by Victor, because, he knew what was coming. But Victor is, I guess because of all the trauma that he's seen, he couldn't just articulate, hey, people are going to die. Like, I feel like Victor is kind of at fault for this, because I feel like if he would have told Donna or Boyd or anybody of any significance or leadership that something was going to happen based on his past, we could have definitely been more vigilant about keeping everybody safe, until the threat passed. But maybe it was just inevitable, and no matter what Victor did, it would have happened. There's no way to really know, but I don't know. It just really sucks that we know that there's a character that at least had a good bit of reasoning as to why something bad was going to happen. So, Jade and Jim are trying to convince Donna, and Donna's like, you know what? I mean, it's fine. And that's where we find out that 14 people actually died in the assault on Colony House. So we got Boyd and Sarah continuing to walk through the forest. He tells her that, that they'll sit and wait until dark and then they'll leave in the morning. And he wants to handcuff her in the house because, she's a murderer. It's as simple as that. And, she convinces him, by saying, she's not going anywhere. And Boyd, lets her know in no uncertain terms that if she runs, he will shoot her. Fair enough. So we get back to another flashback. And the flashbacks in this episode, I feel, are done well. And they're not like, I hate to compare it, but let's face it, a lot of people that had a lot to do with Lost had a lot to do with this series. So being wary of flashbacks is definitely earned, because you remember how, flashback happy they were in Lost. I mean, every other scene was a flashback. And up until this point in the series, we haven't really seen very much of it. But I think that the context that these flashbacks are giving is definitely necessary, especially in understanding Boyd and his relationship with his family. So, we get this flashback and, Boyd is trying to basically assess the situation. He's doing what a military man does, and Abby's obviously trying to assist him. They're trying to get a handle on the situation and really just get these people organized, because up until Boyd's arrival, like, these people literally were just hiding and praying and hoping that they didn't lose too many the night before. Like, I don't even know how that was tenable, really. I mean, especially with these monsters, we know that you can't really hurt them. You can't injure them in any real significant way. The only thing that you can do is run, because they don't seem to ever run. Now, maybe that's just because of our perspective as the viewer, but I've yet to see these things run. They just kind of walk at this like really leisurely pace, and so they run you down and devour you. It's really, really unsettling. So, we see that they're really making changes in the town and getting everybody organized. And then we get this real interesting scene where Abby is telling Ellis, because she's basically just staring off into space, and she tells Ellis that the town reminds her about a dream she had. And, it's definitely some foreshadowing going on, but I can't really tell you what for. So then we get back to the present, and Boyd tells Kenny that he's going to stay until things settle down. And, I was really proud of Kenny at this point, because, he really steps up and he's like, no, you have a plan. You're trying to save us. You need to get going, and then Donna comes in, and she's trying to ask questions, and Kenny really says, I think, what the audience is definitely feeling, that she just needs to, suck it up, stop sulking and get it together. And, he walks out, with his head held high, and you could tell that Donna now has a newfound respect for Kenny, and she's impressed with him. And then Boyd explains to Donna what the plan is. So then we go to the next flashback, where Boyd finds he's the one that found the livestock. He's the one that found the goats and the chickens and everything in the woods. So, Boyd's arrival definitely literally changed the dynamic of the town from a scared group of individuals to a community, quite literally. And so, what I find interesting is that the monsters don't eat the animal. Why is that? Like, that's another thing that's very strange. Why don't the monsters eat the animal? So Ellis is very concerned about his mom, and he informs Boyd that she's not doing well. He really wants his dad to stay, but Boyd is convinced that he needs to go into the forest, to see what else is out there and see if there's any useful information that they can find out in the woods. Because, he did find the livestock, which is, one of their primary food sources, especially at the diner. So, he's telling his son that, he'll be back that night, and then they'll talk about whatever's bothering mom and formulate a game plan. So, Boyd finds this dog, and it's one of the dogs that we've seen before. I do believe it's the boy in white's dog. And from him following this dog in the woods, he gets lost, and which is weird, but not really. So at first I was kind of weirded out by the scene because we know that Boyd is a soldier. So finding his path, finding a direction shouldn't be impossible for him. But at the same time, we know that things don't necessarily work in the same way in this town or in this, whatever you want to call it, in this space that they do normally. So, finding north and east and west might not be the north, east, and west that we're used to. So he gets lost. And, nighttime is approaching, and of course the monsters are coming out. And Boyd, he falls back into this cave, gun drawn. He's ready to basically give his last stand because he knows what these monsters do. And when he's in this cave, the monsters, who are very interested in devouring him, suddenly just lose interest and walk off. And the reason for this is obviously because of the talismans. And one thing I appreciated about this particular flashback is we get to see the runes that are carved into the talismans, and that they were carved in there before Boyd got to them. So it's not some weird placebo or something else. These items were actually in this cave. Now, we don't know who put them there, who carved it, or whatever, but we do know that they saved Boyd's ass, and that they continue to save the people in the town once Boyd brings them to the rest of the town. So let's see. Then we get to Boyd, and Boyd basically is telling Ellis that he's going into the woods to search for a way out. And he's trying to have a real conversation with his son, which obviously they haven't had a real conversation in a long time. And I really like this moment. It was definitely a moment that if you haven't spoken to your father in a minute, it makes you want to go and call your dad and talk to him and tell him that you love him, because you don't know how much time you have with your parents, not just your dad, but your mom too, until they're gone. So, Boyd having this conversation and telling his son that he is proud of him and proud of the man that he's become, and that he loves his dad. That he loves his son, and and then he says his piece and he leaves. And Ellis just pisses me off in this moment because he's still sitting there pouting and just looking like a petulant child. And it takes Fatima, of all people, to tell him to stop being a little girl about it and go and, go love on your dad, because this might be the last moment. And this means a lot coming from Fatima, because we know from a previous episode that she lost her father due to religious violence. Like, we know that. So for her to get up in Ellis's face and tell him to man the hell up and go and hug his daddy is a big deal. So then we get the flashback of Boyd gathering the talismans, only to hear gunshots coming from the town. And when we get to the town, we see a horrific scene. And I never expected it to be this bad. When they talked, like last episode, we got a little bit of a glimpse of what, had happened with Abby. But we didn't really know what that one guy meant, the string theory guy. We didn't know what he meant when he said that she went crazy, and we get to see it on full display in this flashback. She is just gunning down the denizens of the town indiscriminately. And Boyd runs up, and he's trying to reason with her, and she's telling him that it's not real, it has to be a dream, and she's gonna wake everybody up. She has clearly lost it. And he's trying his very best to reason with his wife with his gun drawn, because he knows what she is capable of. He has seen it, and he knows that she's tough, and that gun in her hands, she is a wrecking ball of destruction at this point. And he's trying so very desperately to disarm her. And then Ellis comes up, and he is also trying to reason with his mom, and Abby points the gun at Ellis. And as a father, I don't know what I would do in that situation if it came down to it. But Boyd, he acts without hesitation, and he puts her down because he knew that he had to save her. Yeah, that scene hit me directly in the gut. Like, it was a rough scene to see, but it definitely made the show that much more real, just watching it. And so, Ellis has followed Boyd in the present, and when he catches up to him, he lets his dad know that the talismans are what saved him and Fatima from Colony House. And he explains that he had all this pent-up anger with his father for what happened and what went down, but that he's grateful that his father did the right thing by going into the woods. And he apologizes to his dad. It took him a minute, but he finally is able to come to terms with the idea that there was nothing that could be done. Abby was losing it, and if Boyd hadn't done the right thing, not the easy thing, not the thing that made everybody feel better, but the right thing, there would have been a lot more deaths, himself included. And so this moment is almost spoiled, because then Ellis sees Sarah, and he starts freaking out, and Boyd has to calm his son down and ask him to trust him and not tell anybody that he saw her, because basically, if Boyd is successful, it won't matter. But if he's not, then they need to be able to ease the townspeople into the idea that a murderer is still on the loose. And hopefully, if this doesn't work out, he puts her in the box where she deserves to be. So then we have a really cool scene with Kenny bringing the townspeople together and really just giving them a very rousing speech to let them know that yes, they were bloodied in that siege the night before, but that they can come together, that there's not going to be any more Colony House or any more town divisions, but that they're going to come together as a single community. And then Donna gets up and she explains that Jim and Jade are going to use Colony House to get the signal to the outside world, hopefully. And we get Fatima, who consoles Ellis because Ellis is now coming to the realization that he might not see his father again. So after this, we get the final scene of Boyd and Sarah heading out on their journey. And of course, Boyd, being the pragmatic individual that he is, he put them cuffs on Sarah. And I do not blame him, because you don't know when she's going to have a freak out and lose it. And, then again, play the victim like she didn't do anything. So I'm really happy that Boyd did the smart thing like he always does, and, put his feelings aside and did what was sensible. So that was this episode. I'm really looking forward to episode 9, man. Just want to say that I got a comment in the last episode that, there are in fact 10 episodes. So just want to let everybody know that there are 10 episodes. This wasn't the season finale. So if you heard me say that, my bad, guys. I don't know where I got that from. I do believe it was from it might have been from like Wikipedia when the show first came out, or maybe it was from a press release prior to the show coming out saying it was only going to be 8 episodes. But anyway, doesn't matter now. 10 episodes. Can't wait to talk to y'all about episode 9. So that's going to be it for us for this episode. See you guys on the next one. 8-Bit Heroes out. Peace. If you'd like to get a shout out on the channel, then hit that like button. Maybe share it with a couple of friends. And do us the biggest honor of all, and subscribe to the channel so you can join the 8-Bit Heroes family. And while you're at it, hit that bell icon so you can be notified when our new videos come out.